Welcome to today's conversation with Dr. Harsha Halahalli, Registrar of Nitte deemed to be University, a distinguished academician and researcher. Dr. Halahalli's journey spans from physiology and neurophysiology to leadership in curriculum development and medical education. His contributions to cognitive neuroscience and his innovative approaches to teaching and assessment have shaped generations of learners and educators. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Disha. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
So, to start with, you have transitioned from being a researcher and professor to an academic leader. What was the most defining moment in this journey that shaped your philosophy on education?
Yes, I have been fortunate to have played different roles over my career. As you rightly said, started as a teacher, dabbled in quite a bit of research, and for the last 5, 6 years, I've been more and more working in administrative roles. Um, I'm a regular guy, so I can't really think of any big epiphany moment or a big kind of a defining moment as such. I guess for all of us, there are many experiences which, if we reflect upon, uh, are opportunities for us to learn and refine our ways of thinking and our outlook on life and education in this particular sense. So that way, there are quite a few experiences that I can think of. I'll try and recall one of them for you. This was the time when I had actually worked for a couple of years as a teacher in a medical school, and then I decided to spend some more time in research, and I actually enrolled for an MPhil program after my MD at NIMANS in Bangalore. And what happened there was I was talking to a senior student a student colleague of mine, a peer of mine, and in neurophysiology there is this concept of how individual neurons communicate with each other using electrical impulses. It's a rather complex idea. The theory of it is a little dense, especially for somebody with less maths background like me. And as we were talking about this, my senior friend Sunil, I remember him, he was saying, is it possible to actually kind of model this, develop a mathematical model for this in Excel, which is a day-to-day tool that all of us use. Of course, there are very well-known models for looking at how this electrical activity happens and changes with time in neurons. But for us as young students, the challenge was that we took on ourselves is, can we replicate that in a ordinary tool like Excel? And for the next 5, 6 days, both of us feverishly worked on it. He was a little more preoccupied with other things, but I kind of took it upon as a kind of a personal challenge. And it was very satisfying that I was actually able to replicate this model in a long Excel sheet. It went to almost 30,000 rows. So um, when I reflect upon that experience, and now when as educator, there are some things which I strongly believe in. I believe that learning happens most effectively when you learn by doing things. And for me, that personal experience, I think, was a strong kind of a trigger to think along those lines. So building this model, uh, in a sense, really kind of helped me consolidate those concepts very strongly. And I believe that is why today I believe that students learn best when they learn by doing. That is one thing. Second component of that experience, which kind of really, when I reflect upon, has shaped my thinking in education now, is that learning from peers with peers is very effective. I don't think the same kind of competitiveness, the same kind of fueling each other's interest would have happened if it was a senior teacher. There's always a bit of a distance. There's always a bit of a, the dynamic is different. Whereas when you're learning with somebody of your own age, of your, a fellow student, sometimes learning becomes more fun and therefore more long lasting. So these are two ideas that have stuck with me. And it didn't, of course, I don't think 15 years ago when this actually happened, I really thought about much about this. But when I look back, I think these are the kind of experiences that shape your outlook on life and in philosophy of education.
That's really wonderful. So it was an interesting experience. So your work in cognitive neuroscience and psychiatric disorders explores the human mind in great depth. How do you How do these insights influence the way universities can better support student learning and well-being today?
Yes, I spent quite a few years, particularly looking at the brain mechanisms that underlie disorders like schizophrenia, depression, and related disorders. That was a great experience for me because it helped me really think deeply about neuroscience in particular, which has always been a strong interest for me. And as part of the project, I actually worked on developing tasks, tests to assess cognitive abilities of people and use those tasks to probe what happens in the brain when we're doing those tasks. So it was at two levels, what we call as cognitive psychology, that is the behavior and experience of things, and also cognitive neuroscience, that is what happens inside the brain when we are behaving in a particular way or experiencing a particular thing. So without going into details of that, what that phase of my training and experience gave me was that it gave me an opportunity to dive deep into in general about the theories of learning, and what actually happens in the brain. What are the constraints, what are the biological constraints of the brain that limit or potentiate learning in different conditions. So I think many of my attempts later on as a teacher and possibly as an administrator, I believe has been guided by some of the scientific principles which have learned then. So one example is that um, you know it is something which our grandmother also has told us. The more you learn repeatedly, the better you remember and the better you're able to perform. There's a lot of truth in that, and what as a neuroscientist I can now understand is that there are no nuances of that. It is not just about learning more; it's about learning and learning and learning again with the gaps in between. What we call as spaced learning is much more effective than a long session of continuous learning, and also interleaving in the sense that learning something now, learning something else after that, and then again revisiting the first thing that you learned. That kind of interleaving of learning experiences is more effective in remembering for a longer time. So now I understand the brain science behind that also, and therefore I'm much more confident when I suggest this to my students. I'm much more um, demonstrative when I discuss this with my colleagues, the advantages of this kind of learning. So I think these are the ways in which each one's professional experience, professional training can be translated into what we do as a teacher, what we do as an administrator. There are several examples like that, but I think in the interest of time, let's stop here.
That's lovely, sir.
So, you were instrumental in introducing digitized physiology laboratories, objective structured practical evolutions, and clinical skills training. If you were to envision the future classroom at Nitte DU, what would it look like?
Yes, for each of us as a teacher or as an administrator, there are a lot of opportunities. So, in whatever we do, very often over time we become solidified in the way we think. We become kind of very rigid about what we teach and how we teach. So that's something that happens in all disciplines, and my discipline is no exception to that. So in physiology, sometimes 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I started teaching, some of the equipment that we used to teach physiology in the laboratories were literally something which was used 100 years ago. Uh, they would actually be better in a museum than in a in a classroom or a laboratory setting. So then these kind of opportunities come by, and sometimes we get the support to bring about changes, and we did that. Looking ahead, my kind of a dream classroom has always been, and it is not very difficult to achieve. It only needs a change in mindset. Is a classroom which is open, in the sense open to both ideas and the way we teach and the way we learn. Open both, not only in what we do in the classroom, but also the architectural support for that. Rather than rows of benches, round tables for students to sit around and learn, and also combining the typical lecturing mode of learning with hands-on training. So why do students need to have a separate lecture hall and a separate laboratory. Can we think of a singular space which can transform into a lecture hall for a more didactic discussion, and can also change into a hands-on training place where you gets put equipment on your table right there, and also more importantly, a lot more opportunity should be there for collaborating between students. uh, the teachers can hover around, but let most of the work be done by the students. So if we can build classrooms both from a structural point of view as well as the mindset point of view along these lines, that would be a wonderful idea. There are universities around the world which have tried this, but we don't see much of such innovations happening in and around us. I think we have to sometimes think radically, be bold, and bring about such changes. I'm sure it's happening, but we need to give more force for such changes.
Yes, as a student, I think even I would hope for like,
Relate to that?
yes.
So, since stepping into your role as a registrar, what initiative or reform do you believe has created the most meaningful impact on the university community?
Frankly, I don't think big things have happened just when I stepped into as a registrar or because I became a registrar. In any large organization like ours, there's a continuous process. Changes happen, um, improvements happen, enhancements happen. So I don't think it's right to kind of compartmentalize as during this period or that period. But yes, uh, over the years, let's say last few years in the university, there are some things which are being done differently in the sense that we have become more process oriented. There are two aspects to anything, administration in particular: process and people. Both are important. I don't think we should undermine either the process or the people. But generally, it's a little more easier to do things around people. But there are pitfalls in that. So, what our vice chancellor, current vice chancellor, past vice chancellors, whom I've had the fortune to work with, what we've been moving towards is try and put in more processes, define better processes, so that they outlast people. It doesn't matter whether XYZ is registrar today or ABC is in a particular position tomorrow. Irrespective of that, good practices should become entrenched and they should improve. And that can happen if you focus more equally or maybe a little more on processes as well as making sure that the right people are there and the people receive the right support to implement this process. So this is one broad idea that we've been working on, and I would believe that that has been a very positive kind of a development in the university's administration. Of course, there are other areas. For example, we have been emphasizing more and more on outcome-based education. That has been one of the fundamental things that we've been doing. There are a lot of advantages to that. As a student, I don't know about you, but when I was a student, I went through my MBBS, and when I look back now, I realized that nobody really told me what I'm supposed to learn during my MBBS days. Of course, I learned a lot. There's no denying that, thanks to my teachers and everything. But there was no clarity as to what I was supposed to do, what I was supposed to achieve, what was expected of me. I think outcome-based education puts that very clearly upfront for teachers as well as students. This is what you're expected to achieve at the end of your course. This is what you're expected to be able to do at the end of your program. This is what these the competencies that you should be able to acquire over this period. So that brings in a lot of clarity and also brings in a lot of responsibility, both for students and for teachers, isn't it? So if you as a teacher tell your student, look, this is what you should be able to do at the end of your course, it doesn't matter whether they learn it on their own or whether they learn it with the help of the teachers. It doesn't matter whether they learn it from YouTube or from a particular class in the college. Does it really matter? What matters is that they achieve that outcome. So I think that is one thing that we've been trying to do. And today, if you see, including your college and every other college, every other program in the university, compared to some years ago, there is greater clarity in terms of this outcome-based education. So these are some examples, and for teachers, we are providing a very systematic. We are doing a very systematic effort in increasing the capacity of teachers to constantly update themselves and to bring in newer and uh, better methods of providing training for students. So that kind of support is there, and also we have been trying to motivate teachers by various means, including making sure that teachers' performance is also evaluated. Just like students' learning is assessed, what teachers do also is assessed, and teachers can reflect upon their previous years. What they've been able to do, what are the areas that they need to work on. So that kind of a performance-based assessment is something that we've been doing consistently for the last 4 or 5 years. I think all of this are generally positive changes for a university like us.
Yes.
So, I think it's the last question. So, finally, if you were to share one piece of advice with students, not as an administrator, but as someone who has walked through medicine, research, and leadership, what would it be?
Yeah, that's interesting and also always tough. I really don't know. Personally, I think what has worked for me is that you should try and do what you love doing, or you should learn to love what you're doing. What I mean is, we should try our best to put ourselves in a position where we're able to do something that is, that we are passionate about, that we enjoy doing, that we are good at. That means aptitude as well as skills to that. So especially for young children, for young students, we say if you can find what interests you, you'll do well. It's common sense, isn't it? So that should be an effort. I mean, we should not spare any effort to put ourselves in a position where we can do what we like doing. But then life is not always, it doesn't work according to our plans. So sometimes you may find yourself in a position where you are in a role that you are not really cut out for, you think you're not cut out for, or it is not something that you really kind of enjoy doing. But even in such situations, I think the trick is to start loving to do that. Because unless you're invested in what you're doing, whether you like it or not, you're not going to be good at it. So what you can change. By changing that, get yourself to do what you want to do. Pursue your passion. But sometimes you may not be able to do that fully. So in such situations, what I felt is that, because I have had many changes in roles. If you look at and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's an indication that I've not been very, very particular about what I want to do. It can be thought of in that way. But also, it is possible that I've been able to kind of roll with the situation and learn to like what I do. And I can, without any hesitation, I can say that all the roles I've played, I've actually enjoyed doing them. So I think that's a possible kind of advice that I could share. I don't know if it's going to be useful, but let's see.
No, that was interesting. It was lovely. So, that concludes our conversation with Dr. Harsha Halahalli. His journey reminds us of how passion and innovation can truly transform education and inspire future generations. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, keep learning and keep growing.
Thank you, Disha.
Thank you so much, sir.